it could have been any of those people. He chose me. We're told in Christianity, don't celebrate nothing like that. You know, you're arrogant. You know what I mean? You're selfish. Oh, hey, it is what it is. You know what I mean? We need to celebrate and be happy about that. I ain't gonna let nobody rain on my parade. If God chose us, he chose us. That's what it is. Okay, the final part of our lesson is we're going to talk about this noon, okay, this letter noon. And you're going to see it, and it's going to be on, you know, words all the time. But there's 4 different noons that you need to know about. There's 4 of them. They all look alike, okay? So if you look at this first thing up here, the question is how would you translate the following verbs? And of course, I'm going to send this to you. I want you to review it, read it for yourselves so you can comprehend it for yourself. But I'm going to just talk about the basic outline of it and go over some of the things about it. So if you notice in the teaching here that they have is showing us that there are all these look exactly the same. I mean, you got a noon here, you got a noon here, you got a dot here, you got a dot here, you got a noon here, you got a dot here, you got a noon here, you got a dot here. Okay. So that's that. They have all those in common, all those things in common. And they're saying that these are 4 different words. Okay. And they look completely the same. Okay. Now you got the dot in this, you know, the schwa, the dot and the schwa, the dot in the quamates, and then the dot in the schwa. So what, you know, there are some variations, right? So, but they all mean something different. Okay. So it says it's clear to see that all these verbs are made up of 2 parts. They're made up of a verb. Okay. And they have this on the front of it. That's what it is. But there are 4 different reasons why this noon can be added. That's why I said this is one of the most trickiest things that I've experienced in the Hebrew language, because here context will tell you some things too, but it may not, because you might get a little confused. Okay. So what it's saying is that each one of these basically has they're all from the same group. So let's find some of the similarities. Let's chop it down so it won't be that confusing to us. All right, so if there's 4 of them, then we got to know, okay, you know, are they past, present, and future? We got to know that. That's what something's going to be, right? So they're saying that the noon can be, it can represent we in the future tense when it's added to the front of a root. Okay, just like you got right here, nishmar, meaning we will guard. Guard is shamar. The we will is this ni right here. Okay, so nishmar. So it can be translated that way. Okay, so it's in a future tense. It's in group number 1. Right. So what I want to do is I don't want us to go over just what it can actually mean. I want to talk about where you can find it. Okay, so it's in group number 1. It's in group number 1. It's in group number 1. And it's in group number 1. So what did we just find out? That if there's 4 of them, we know for sure that they're all in what group?
1.
They're all in group number 1. So let's scratch it off the table now. So we don't have to ever worry about group number 2, group number 3, and group number 4. It's only going to be in group number 1. Now that we got that solved, so we know that it's a noon here. They're all the same. They all got the dot on them. So we got that. That's all the same. Group number 1 is all the same. All of them, group number 1. And group number 1 is a what? What kind of action is it?
Simple.
Simple action, right? So it's simple, not a problem. We got that off the table. So the only thing we have to solve now is this. Now what we're going to solve is, okay, so in group number 1, we got the active form 1 time. We got the passive form 1 time. We got the passive 2 times and the passive 3 times. So we got passive 3 times. Passive form is 3 times. Out of all 4 times, the passive is going to be used 3 times. That means that the action is, the person is not doing the action, but the action is happening to them. Okay. Or it. So there's only one that's active. The action, they're doing the action themselves. And the only one that's active is the one that's in the future tense that says we. Okay. So there's only one active and the rest of them are passive. So what we got to find out now is, how will we know that? Okay. So let's find some other commonalities. So let me put this out here. You guys follow me so far?
Yes.
Find the commonalities. Find what's common. Find everything that's in common. So that's in common. These three right here are in common. They're all passive forms. Okay. This is the only outlier, this one right here in the active form, but they're all in group number one. Now we're going to look at something to find some more commonalities. Well, over here, the first one is we. Okay. And the second one is we. So we know that there are two of them that can be used for we. Not a problem, right? So here it is, and this is in the future. And this is in the future, so that's in common, and this is in common. So they share that. The only difference is one is going to be in an active and the other one's going to be in a passive. So when we break this down, what it's saying is, we is going to be used in the only, hear me, only in the future tenses. Two of them are going to only be used in the future tense, which leaves me in the next two down here. So these two above board right here are only going to be in the future tense. And they're used as we. And the only way that that can happen, since there's two of them, then we know that there's only two ways that something can be done. And how is that? Two ways in terms of its form. What?
Active and passive.
Active and passive, number one and number two. That's it. We solved this. So we just took the confusion out of it. We found what they had in common. Okay, it's all in common. It's all in common. Group one, and the only difference is one is active and the other one is passive. That's it. Now that we got this done, now we can say, let's focus down here now. Okay, so this is how I'm teaching us, because it can be very confusing because you're reading all this information like, I'm not gonna remember that. I'm not gonna remember all this. If you put things together that are common, you put them in their box, then you can move that box to the side and you can pack something else. You see what I'm saying? Just like when you have, different types of spices, something they have in common. You put that which is in common with each other and you keep the other stuff separate. So even though they might look alike, let's find some commonality. And then we're like, okay, well, we know right now that all I got to really know about the future tense, what do I got to know about the future tense in a sentence? What all I got to know about the future tense with the noon? It's only done in how many ways?
Two.
And those two ways are never going to change. It's active and passive. That's it. Okay, it's not hard. Now, 3 and 4. Now it says that the noon, because remember, they all got the little noon with the dot underneath it. So they're trying, it looks confusing. So let's find what they have in common in 3 and 4. So that's in common. That's in common. We got that. That's in common. That's in common. They got that. That's in common. That's in common. They got that. They're passive, passive, passive. That's it. They got both of those in common. Everything is cool. But what do we got that's not in common? Past tense and present tense. So does this really cause us a problem? No. The reason why it's not a problem, everybody, for us, okay, is simply because I'm not going back on my word. I was confused until I started teaching it. The reason why this is not going to be a problem is because we know that there's a future tense, we know there's a past tense, and we know there's a present tense. So if we scratch off the future tense, that leaves us with 2 tenses left. We got past and present. Future's gone. We already understand that. We understand that the noon on the front will be passive or active. Group number 1. All of them are group number 1, so that's not an issue. So the only 2 groups we have left, the only 2 tenses that we have left is the past and the present. And we got this solved that they're both going to be passive. And they're all in group number 1, so that's not no problem. And they all look exactly the same. The only difference is whether it's in the past or whether it's the present. Now, is that hard?
No.
No. So that's solved. Okay. Future tense, how many you have?
2.
2. Past tense, how many you got?
2.
1.
1.
1.
Present tense, how many you got?
1.
1. That's it. That's it. So 2 of them are going to go to the future. One's going to go to the past and one's going to go to the present. So think about this being a, just say they're, I don't know what the name is for a group of twins that are 4 of them. What do you call them? Quadruplets?
Quads. Mhm.
Yeah, they're quad. I said it right. Praise Yah, quadruplets. Say these are nothing but kids. Let's call them some quadruplets. Right? Because that's what they are. There's 4 of them. They look exactly the same. They still got the dot underneath them. Mama had 4 quadruplets. Okay. We know 2 of them are always going to be tripping. So let's put those in the future tense. Okay. They're going to say, let's send them off to the future. And we always know they're all part of the same group. They're all born on the same day in the same room. So let's call that group 1, their room that they were born in. We know that those who are in the future tense, one is active, always active doing something, and say the other one is passive. That's all you got to remember about them. Then call these other 3 and 4, the other ones of the quadruplets. Let's say what it is with them. They say they have some passive behaviors. They're not active. They're not active. They never will be. These kids are not active. They're just going to be the way. They're always just they're passive. All, they got that in common with their other quadruplet. They're passive. Okay. So out of the quadruplet family, there's only one who's going to be active, and he's going to be in the future. And you can say, well, he's active, so he's always thinking about the future. You see what I'm saying? You got to make this make sense. There's one who's in the past. He's passive. He's in the future. Okay. But the one that we worried about, we're going to send one in the past and we're going to send one in the present. That's it. So 2 of them are going to go to the future, and 2 of them says, you know what? I'm going to go my own way. The other one says, okay, where are you going? Well, I'm going to the past. The other one says, okay, well, I'm staying here in the present. And that's how you deal with it. Does that make sense? You got to find a way to make sense for you. You have to attach it to families. You have to attach it to children. You have to attach it to something that means something to you. Words don't mean anything. You understand? Unless you can package it together, okay? To make some distinguishments and some like we did in our lesson today, okay? So that's what it is. So that's something that I want you to start thinking about, okay? So in summary, we have 4 possible translations, and we found out what they are. We will guard. That's in the future, okay? So will is going to tell you something. Will is always going to be in the future. That's always going to be part of the vernacular, okay? Is will. We will. And it's always going to be we. Okay? I'm going to actively do it, or it's going to be done. Okay. Right now. So if you think about it, even though they're quadruplets, this family right here, they're all quadruplets. You can see in their translations on how they act. Let's call translations their behavior. Okay. How they're acting. Okay. And this says we will, one is actively going to do something. The other one is we will be, meaning they're going to let something happen to them. Right? The third one says, I'm going to be different. Okay. So it's saying he was. That's passive. Was means passive. Okay. It's passive. The will be is passive. The will is active. Okay. And he is being. That is passive. Okay. So 2 of them are going to be we. and 2 of them are going to be he. 3 of them are going to be passive and 1's going to be active. 2 of them are going to be in the future because it's will. That's future. Okay, 1 is going to be active, the other one's going to be passive. Here, it says, okay, what other tenses I have left? Okay, he was, that's in the past. Was tells me something, and guard did tells me that's in the past. Who else is left? Oh, the little one, he's left over. Okay, I'm going to put him in the present. Okay. He is. Is means present. Let me erase this right quick so you can see this word. I got it messed up. Is. So these are the words that we're looking for. Okay. Is, was, and will. Or excuse me, will be here. Will be and will. So those are translational values. Okay. That's what the translations are, because there is no word for is in Hebrew. Okay. There is no word for was in Hebrew. There is no word for will be in Hebrew. There is no word for will in Hebrew. There isn't. Okay. They're putting that there because these little dots that they have here and stuff like that are going to tell you things about them. So right now we don't have any of the other vowels that are underneath here to tell us these things. So how are we going to find out what will and what will be and what was or he was and is being? Those words are represented by the dots, the commates, the 3 dots and things like that, which they're going to show us right quick. I just wanted to bring that out, that we can easily see that the noon right here means we, he, depending on what tense you're in. Okay. Shamar has never changed. It's exactly the same for all of them. Exactly the same. And that has to do with guard, 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 guard. The ED on here is going to let us know about where it's at in its tense. The will be is going to tell you whether it's active or passive. Okay. So we're just breaking it down, and that's how you do it. So, but it says, so how are we going to tell the difference between these verbs? Well, it's going to be found in those vowel points that you've been studying. Okay. So it's found here. The answer is that it's not enough just to look at the first vowel. We also have to look at the second vowel and sometimes even the third as well. So they're letting us know that these vowels, these little markings called the dagesh, they tell you what something means. Okay. So we already have the basis of the root. We already know what the root is, and we kind of know what this letter means, you know, now that they told us what it could be, we, or he. We got that. So what we don't know is the part of it like this. We don't understand this, and we don't understand that, and this and that. So those marks, okay, which are called vowel points, are going to tell you, okay, different things about how something is functioning. So now that we're looking at the second vowel, because we're not looking at the first one, okay, we're going to look at the second vowel as well. We can see right away that the second verb, which is nishmar, okay, which is this one right here on number 2, is different than all the other verbs. And what does it mean by that? It's saying that the markings that are underneath this in particular, number 2 of this, is different than this one and this one and this one. Okay. So it's like putting a puzzle together. So now that we understand this, we go, okay, so these all 3 look alike, but they're all translated differently. So what would I have to look at? And then what they're going to tell us is that we're not going to only look at the first or the second letter that's there, or the first and second letter. You have to look at the third letter that the vowel will be under. Okay. So what does that look like? So the voweling pattern that they have so far for number 2 is this one. As we know, is an identifying sign of group number 1, passive. Okay. And they tell us when you look at some notes down at the bottom, they're going to tell you where you can find that on whatever page that you had. Okay. And it lets you know that it's in the future tense. The passive form, as we know, describes an action being done from the viewpoint of the thing, not the person, but the thing that the action is being done on, because they're passively receiving it. Okay. This is the reason why it says nishamar. Okay, yeah, nishamar. Nishamar means we will be. That's the passivity in it. Guarded. We will be. Now that it's will be, it hasn't happened, meaning that it's future. Okay, we will be. We're passively will be guarded. We're not guarding anybody, they're going to guard us. Okay, so let's see now a few more examples of this. And so they give you those examples that you could take a look at, you know, Nishalak, Nishama, and Nilaquak. Okay, we will be sent, we will be heard, and we will be taken. So what do we need to learn? All we need to really remember is what this means. And what that means is will be, and will be means future. That's it. Okay, so that comes with practice. So now this is all good for the second of the 4 verbs that we listed above. So that's the one they went over. They went on number 2. Now they said, well, how are you going to tell the difference between all the other ones that have the same markings? And what I mean by the same markings is the one that's the other 3 that stand out, you know, number 1, you know, number 3 and number 4. How are we going to tell the difference? Because you just told us what this is. So we got that. That's passive future tense based on this mark right here, you know, kamats and this. We got that. So how are we going to tell the difference for these other ones? Because they look exactly the same. And the answer to that is that we're going to have to look at the 3rd letter. Okay, so the answer is that we have to go to the 3rd vowel, which is underneath the 3rd letter. So underneath the 3rd letter, you're going to have, so here it is, the dot and the 2 dots. They all got the same thing, a dot and the 2 dots. The dot and the 2 dots. Okay, that's what's there. But on the 3rd letter, you have a kamats again. You got a pathak right here, another marking, and over here you got this vowel. Okay, not only they're different sounds, but they all are different. They all look different. This one is this one. That's a long one. This is a short one. And this is a short one. Okay, so these are going to tell you something. Okay, so by looking at the 3rd vowel of these verbs as well, we are able to identify exactly which form they're in. And of course, they give you a reference page to look at, you know, page number 74, page number 29, and they tell you, hey, this means this. You know, this means we in the future tense, you know, for the vowel for this one. How also would you know that this is a future tense? Let me ask you a question. So what I know, when you look at this, without knowing that it's a future tense, how would you tell that it's a future tense? What tells you that it's a future tense?
Noon is on the front.
Yeah, the noon is on the front. We got that, but there's 4, you know, but it could be a noon with a dot again. Remember, there's 3 of them that looks exactly the same. So this dot right here tells you that it's a future tense. Remember, all of our sounds are this, and that's a short version, because when it's really written out, it's supposed to be a noon. It could be a shin, and then it's going to be a mem, and then it would be a wa with a dot over it, and then it would be a r. Okay, nishmor. See, so what they've done is they shortened it up and just put the dot over the mem and the resh right there. But anytime you hear that O sound, okay, like nishmor, that O sound, okay, tells you that it's a future tense. That's another indicator that it's a future tense. Okay. Future. Okay. And it's, well, we know it's a group number 1 because, and so let me ask you something. Is this number 1 or number 2? Remember, how many do we have of those, the quadruplets? How many belong to the future tense? 2 of them. 2. Good. So the first one we already dealt with. Now we're dealing with the second one. It's called nishmor. So the one that we know, he's in a future tense. It means we presently, we will, or excuse me. Yeah, we in the future tense. Active 1. Okay. So they tell you exactly, going back to the page where to go. But what I'm saying is this right here tells you that it's in the future. That's another indicator. It's not just the noon that's on the front. That could tell you too, like we. And because it's on the front of it, it will let you know that, but you know, we could be in the past, as you saw. We could be right here in the past. The noon could be right on the front of it, and you think it's a future, and it's really a past. You see? So you got to be able to look at the noon and tell, okay, which one is it? Is it a future? Is it a past tense? And the way that you could do this is by little things like this. That's going to tell us that it's in the future. That's the indicator that it's in the future. Okay. If the third vowel is this right here on page number 29, you will see that this noon is a sign of group number 1 passive in the past tense. Okay. So it represents. So let me ask you a question. If it's in the past, is it a we or a he? This up here is a we. It's a he, exactly, because it's in the past. So this noon right here just represents what? Passivity. That's all it is. It's just letting you know it's passive. Because you take the noon off right there, you have a 3-letter root, and the 3-letter root is a third person masculine singular. But also what tells us that it's in the past is the fact that there's nothing here on the end of it. Okay? There's nothing there on the end of it. So we know that, wait a minute, it's through just the 3 letters by themselves. Any 3-letter root by itself is in the past tense, and it's always he. Guarded. Okay. But now that I put the noon on it is he, right, was passive guarded. So when you go to page number 29, if you remember, the group number 1 had what they would call the first identifying sign was this for group number 1. Remember? That's just a simple. Let me see. Group number 1 had a identifying sign for a simple active action as this. Okay. Group number 1 for a passive sign is a noon. So those are the 2 signs. So when you go to page number 29, you'll see, oh, that is true. So for example, if I had shamar, right, which is to guard, and I had it like that. This little right here tells me that it's a simple action, and it means he guarded, past tense, okay? The moment that I put that noon on the front of this, guess what happens? The noon is going right here. This is going right here. The 2 dots right here. And then I'm going to put this under here like that, and then I'm going to put that. That tells me that is still a past tense, but it has a passive noon on the front of it. It still means he was. That was is right here. He was guarded. You see, not he guarded, but he was guarded. So either he's doing the action, which is shamar by itself, or he was guarded. Okay. You guys understand what I'm saying? Because group number 1, our first lessons that we ever had, it told you if you have a on the front of that first letter, and the next letter is a kamatz, I mean a pathak, and then this one like this, shamar, that means perfectly past tense. It's already done. He. As soon as I put that noon on there, I got to get rid of this and then put the 2 dots and then put the dot right here. And that's called nishmar. And nishmar means he was guarded. Okay. And we know that there's the quadruplets. We've already dealt with the future tense by knowing, okay, that one's this one. And the other future tense that we just saw had the second letter, I think, right here like this. Yeah. Okay. Because remember, they said, well, what's the difference? Remember up at top, it says, what's the difference between all of these? And let me go back up there right quick to show you right here. What's the difference between these? See, what's the difference between these? So we know the first one is a future tense. Okay. We know this one right here is a future tense. So we got 2 of those. That's the quadruplets. And then we know the other one's a past. Then we got another one that's a present. Okay. And that's how we know. Okay. And whether it's active or passive has to be determined. And the way that you find out if it's being actively done or passively done is going to be found in not in only in this one, but in these other ones, you have to try to figure out. In these here, you got to figure out if it's active or passive. That's what you have to figure out. So you can see that it's really like a game. It's a puzzle. Okay. So we isolate to find out. This one on the bottom here talks about the present tense. The third vowel is this. Right here. That's the difference. This right here and this one right here looks exactly the same. It's only that third letter that you need to be looking out at. Okay. So that one tells you right there that we know that they share something in common. They're passive. Group number one passive. Group number one passive. And we also have a passive in one of our future tense, right? And so that final letter right there tells you that it's passive. And they tell you where to go and look at that again. Okay. So that's something that you have to look at. And here's some other things that you can look at, right? Some more examples. So you can go over it and you can commit it to memory. Okay. So I'll let you go over that. Finally, the last part of the lesson is, and there's some more information called, if you notice, I just want to bring this out right quick. When you talk about group number one, right? Because that's all these noons are dealing with. They're not dealing with group 2, 3, and 4. It's only group number one. So we got that off the table. It's only going to be two types of actions, active or passive. And we already know that only one of these quadruplets is an active one. Everybody else is passive. Okay. So then you got to figure out, well, how would I be able to recognize the signs for the one who's in the past or the present and future? How do I recognize it? You recognize it by these things. That'll tell you what it is. Those things are going to tell you whether or not. So once you memorize that, and it's going all the way down, they're all exactly the same. That's never going to change. So once you memorize this, and you memorize this, and you memorize this one, and you say, okay, I know what these are. So what I want you to do is I want you to not only do it right here, but I want you to get a separate piece of paper, and I want you to draw those dots out. And I want you to do it, and you attach who it is. Which child is this? So you don't make it letters and words, make it into people, and it means something to you. So turn that child and say, okay, well, this child I know right here is this one. I know this one here is this one. He's passive. Oh, this one here, he only works in the future. Got it? So that's how you get it. So that's a little something that I wanted to share with you on how you can try to memorize it. And trust me, I'm still doing the same identical thing that you're doing. All right. And there's a little worksheet for you, exercise that you could get, and you just go ahead and you break this down. And I'm going to give you the answer sheet as well. So it's going to fry your brain a little bit, but you're going to be fine. All right. The final part of your lessons is this one in lesson number 23, the real names of the 7 forms. Okay. As I've been telling you, group number 1, group number 2, group number 3, and all these different names, and group number 4 are not the names. Okay. What it is, these are the names of the groups. Okay. So as I shared with you before, do you guys remember what this word Paul means?
Spaces or
Work. It sounds like panim, but it means work. And when you do work, you're doing a what? An action. This is the reason why, and they say that their rabbis chose this, right? It's really the sages and the rabbis from ancient times. It's not these Jewish people like you would like to think. It's not them who came up with this. They didn't come up with this. Okay. There's something that our ancestors had already put in place. Okay. Because they understand the culture of the word Paul means to actually do work. So these are verbs and their actions. Okay. So it means to do some work, you know, like building a house or planning. I don't put it in architecture. Okay. Because they're going to use the architecture design. I don't use architecture design. I talk about a work when you're talking about a tree. I'm talking about a work when you're talking about a garden. Because when you're talking about a building or architecture, you might be talking about the foundation, but we didn't learn about, well, this is the foundation. in that sense. We learned about a root, and a roots are, and this is what they would call the root. This is what's going to do the work for you. Okay. And so the names of these different groups are named 7 different names. There's 7 of them. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to understand that, again, this is the identifying sign. When you talk about sign, you're talking about the vowel point in group number 1. So if you saw this on the front of a first letter, you know, oh, that's simple. That's active. You saw this one, oh, that's passive. So that's one of our quadruplets right there. So we got that down. All right. But they're telling us that what they're going to do is, since this is the identifying sign, what they're doing is they're taking this word right here, pa'al, and they're going to place this identifying sign directly underneath that first letter. And the reason why they do that is because that's letting us know that this is a simple action. That's why it's called a, if you got the first letter is a P, which is a P, next one is a vowel, ah, and then you got another ah, and then you have an L right here. Pa'al, that's what it's called. Okay. So if that's called pa'al, what's the one underneath it called? Let's spell out the letters. What's the first letter? Right here. Right. There you go, which is an N. What's the dot?
It's a.
That's an I. We got a pay, but it doesn't have a dot in it. So what sound does that make?
Like PH.
PH, praise Yah. Okay, and then you have the all right there with the little thing right here, and then you have the L. So that's called a what?
Nepal.
Nafal. So a nafal and a pa'al are part of group number 1. So a pa'al is going to be your simple action, right? And active. So a pa'al is active. Okay, so that's it. That's an active. How do we know it's active? Because it has this underneath the first one, pa'al. That's simple and it's active. Nifal tells us that that must be what? If it's not active, it's what?
Passive.
Passive. It's only 2 types of actions, an active one and a passive. You only got 2 types of kids. You got an active child or a passive child. You guys that get that, you'd be like, hey, stop being passive, be active. So here it is. And that's in group number 1. So group number 2, what they did is they took that dot, right, that goes on the active for the very forceful action, and they put it under the PL. They put it under the pa'al, and now it becomes a PL. Okay, and the PL is a forceful action. It's an active, forceful way of doing something. Then they said, well, let's take this underneath here and put this under the first letter, and it's called a what? A pual. So you got a pual and you got a PL. That's how they came up with these names. And no matter whether it's pual or PL or pa'al or nifal, it's still a pa'al. It's still work. Doesn't matter. It's still work. It's just how that work is being done and who's doing the work. That's how you got to think about this. Who's doing the work? Am I doing the work, or is the work being done to me? Is she doing the work, or is the work being done to her? So it's only 2 ways an action can happen. See, it's only 2 ways. Then we go to group number 3, which is the causative. So how do you say let's spell out the passive way of a group number 3 causative. How do I spell that out? Give me the first letter in English.
H.
H. Give me the vowel underneath.
Is it a U?
There you go. Give me the next letter. It's a P with no dot in it.
PH.
PH.
And the 2 is the I. AL.
AL. That's called a hufal. Okay. Or sometimes you might hear it called a hofal. Okay. Maybe hufal or hofal. And what it is, this is a passive. Okay. You hear that ooh or that, okay? So that ooh fall is really a passive action. Like the poo all is a passive action. Okay. So any ooh tells you that it's not you doing it. I is you doing it. Okay. So that's called a who fall. And that's a causative. So what would you call a active? Group number 3. Spell it out.
H.
H for the letter hey. Perfect. I.
P.
P H.
PH. Give it to me one more time. What's the vowel underneath there? I. Perfectly. And then the last letter?
L.
L. So what's that called?
Hifel.
Hifel. So we got the Hifel as the active. And so Hifel has a brother called a Hufal. So one is going to be active, the other one's going to be passive. Okay. Hufal and Hifel. Pa'al and Nifal. PL and Pual. Okay. And our last little friend, make them friends, brothers, cousins, whoever you want. Tell me about this number 7 one that stands all by itself. Spell it out.
H-I.
H-I.
T.
Yeah, it has a T, but it doesn't have a
H.
dot in it, so it's not
H.
hard. So it's a T, what?
H.
TH, like a pay that doesn't have a dot, is a PH. This is a TH. Good. The next letter has a pay with a dot in it, so it's a hard what sound?
O.
P.
Hard P. Then we got
P.
an ah, and then we got 2 dots, which is an E sound. And then they got the final letter, which is what?
L.
L.
L. So what's the name of this one?
Hifile.
Hithpael, which is a reflexive action, one done on oneself. Okay, so it's passive and active. Why is it active and passive? It's reflexive, is because they're doing the action on themselves. They're doing the action and they're passively receiving the action from themselves. When you do something to yourself, that's called a hifpael. This is why when we study the Torah, you'll find out that the Most High, when it says that Abraham had faith, you'll be like, no, he didn't. He didn't cause himself to believe anything. That would have been a hifpael. It's not a hifpael. It's called a hifil. That means he was caused to have faith. So he didn't muster this up like the Christians told us. Okay. There's certain actions the Most High has done, and there's certain actions when he says that you guys are going to confess and you're going to admit that you went wrong. He says you need to do this. You need to do that action on yourself. I'm not going to cause you to say sorry. You're going to have to say sorry yourself. To yourself. You understand? So it comes out that group number 1 active is called a Pa'al. Group number 1 passive is a Nafal. Okay. That's how they got their names. Now, I want to show you another chart. So when you look at it, you'll be like, oh, I get it. This makes a lot of sense. Because guess what? If we were learning this or we were taught this, well, if I was taught it, I would have been way ahead of the game, but I wasn't. No one taught me. I would have been way ahead of the game. Okay, so there you go. Hifel. All right. Oh, here it is. Here's my chart. Here's the table of all 7 forms. Okay, and I'm gonna send this over to you so you can look at it and just look at it. Passing by, you're sitting out eating breakfast or whatever, put this on the table and just look at it. Having your coffee, whatever, and look at it. So what you can see, everyone, is that in this table, there's still got group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now that you know what their names are, it's not a big deal to you no more because you already know how they came up with the names. This is the name of the form. Then they're going to tell you about the 3 areas and tenses that we're always dealing with, which is the past, the present, and the future. That's all this is about, past, present, and future. So you can see what they've done. All they've done is instead of it putting the Paul, right, they're using a different type of root. So once they put so the Paul is just there for you to substitute the P for the shin. The ayin right there is substituted for that letter, and this one right here is for that. What are those three? What do these roots have in common? What do they have in common?
Perfect.
They're perfect, absolutely. Thank you so much. But also, too, what's the one thing that they have in common besides the little markings and stuff like this? What does Paul and Shavar have in common?
Both actions.
That's good, Dr. Yared. You're a little bit deeper than me, but here it is. There are only 3 letters. They're always going to be 3 letters. It will never listen. It will always going to be 3. Okay. Even when you got an adopted root, it's still going to be three letters. It might have an extra letter on there, but you'll be able to find and say, oh, I know what the root is. Okay. A majority of all the words that you're going to run across in Hebrew are always going to be 3 letters. This is the reason why they chose Pa'al, because Pa'al means to work. So what they're doing is they're taking the Pa'al root and they're saying, let's just substitute the letters. Let's put this 3-letter root over this sign here. Because if I got rid of this right here, let me show you. Let me get rid of the Pa'al right here. Let me show you what's left. Let me get Shavar. What's left? That's what's left. So what is really the what's really the The is the Pa'al. They're only using Pa'al to remind you that it's work. That's the only reason why they're putting this word here, is to say that it's work. There's no significance in it except for its meaning, its definition. So the real Pa'al is not the actual writing of the Pei and the Ayin and the Lamed. That's not the work. The work is what's doing the work. This is doing the work. This is the one that's telling you what I'm doing. I'm doing it in a what kind of way? It's in group number 1. It's active. What kind of way am I doing it? I'm doing it in a very simple way.
Simple.
Okay, because there's only 2 ways to do something. Okay, I can do it actively or I could do passively. I could do the action myself or it could be done to me. But I have 7 different ways I can do this. Okay, meaning like group number 1, group number 2, group number 3, group number 4. In the first 3 groups, I got 2 different types of courses of action. I got an active form and I got a passive form. So the real reason why Pa'al is there is just to tell you how these dots are going to work. That's all. Because the Pa'al means work or action. And so that's the only reason why they're using it. So what they do is they just take a 3-letter root and they put the same dots that are under PL under Shaber. PL, Shaber. The only reason why you don't hear the PL is because of the letters that they're using. But if I put the PL over it, it would be PL. Here I have different sounds. So this is Shibber, Shaber. Okay, that's it. Up here, instead of it being Pa'al, it's Shavar. Shavar. Pa'al. Okay, Pa'al, Shavar. Okay, so you can see that. That's all they're doing. Now, when we talk about that same root, okay, so what's the root in this word?
Is it Shavar?
There you go, it's Shabar. So if that's the case, then what is the identifying sign? What's the sign? Because we know what the root is. Now, what's the sign? That's your sign. See? So once you know your roots, you'll be like, okay, I got that. The root is never going to change. Only thing that's going to change is the signs that they put in between the words and what they put underneath the words. Okay. Or the root, excuse me. Okay. I should have said that better. So the root is going to be the same. They're going to put in whatever they need to put in to tell you how it's going to work now. Okay. So, and once they give you that sign can either be a past sign, which is right here. Those are the signs of the past tense. This and this. Those are the signs. What are the signs for the present tense? Signs for the present tense is this and this. This is the reason why they have it in bold. Those are the signs for the present. Same root. What are the signs for the future?
Yod. The yod and the commence.
Yes, perfect. I didn't circle this, but I should have right here. That's the sign. That's the sign. Take all this stuff off of the root, and then you got those signs. You got those. Okay. So once we learn what those little signs are, so if they're telling us that these are the signs, everyone, then what should we do? We should make signs. So what the sign is, what signs should you make? If you got some index cards and you want to really know this, make a sign for this and say it's present tense and it's in the group number 1. Simple. You don't even have to put group number 1. You don't even have to put all. You don't even have to do that if you don't want to. Just say simple. Simple active. That's what it is. Your next sign, this one right here. What is that? Simple passive. You made a sign for it. See? So what it is, everyone, these are nothing but pieces. And that's what's getting us, is because we don't understand the pieces that they added. See, the piece right here is this. Here's the next little piece over here. See? So what they've done is, and I think, I'm gonna be honest with you, I really believe they make it difficult in some way or another to keep people discouraged from even learning it. So what we have to do is we have to figure out ways on how to help ourselves. And so I'm using the idea of what they said, a sign. Find the signs and then memorize those things. And then once you memorize these things, the yod and this and the kamash, you'll be like, okay, I know what that is. That's passive. I know what that is. I know what this is. So look at all the signs that you have to memorize. So just think about this and let's just put it in perspective. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Oh, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Don't count these over here. I was doing something else. I didn't see that. Okay. Because that's exactly the same over here. So everything that's in this box over here on this past this line right here, this is everything that you and I should make signs for. Once we memorize these signs, then we can attach those signs to any root. That's what we have to do. Okay. And then once we do that, once you add these pieces, these little signs to whatever root you have, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have 31 different ways. Check this out, just to blow your mind. You have like 31 different pieces, and then you put that on. If you have 500 roots that you know, you multiply that times 31. What is that? That's how we got to look at the game. It's just nothing but a game. Okay. This is all this is. It's nothing but a game. So if you know 500 roots and you multiply times 31, You have over 15,500 words that you be able to translate. And that's not including, listen, that's not including some of the commands that they have out there. So that's even more. So your vocabulary, if you learn your vocabulary, your roots, and then you understand how to deal with this, you'll be literally a master. That's why the name of this book is Mastering Hebrew Verbs, because once you do this, you'll be able to master it. Now, there's still things that you have to learn about its grammatical structure and different rules. But at this point right now, you'll have about $15,000 to $16,000. You're in my mind, dollars. You have literally 15,000 to 16,000 words that you can translate, and you'll understand how they all work. So is it worth it to memorize these 31 different pieces? Yes, it is. It is worth it, isn't it? There's power, okay? So when you look at this, it comes out that the table up there tells you all the different ways that these forms are being used. Okay, beautiful. Wanted to show that to you. Okay, then finally, I'll let you read this on your own. What they're telling you here is you might hear this term called the binyanim, which are the 7 forms that they tell you about building. So they give you their ideology on that and how they came up with that. But again, it has the same thing again, learning those different ways, past, present, and future, active and passive, simple, forceful, causative, and on oneself. So it's a multiplicity of different areas. It's like a Rubik's Cube, you know what I mean? So once we find these things out, you'll be fine. Okay, what I promise you is this, and I thank you guys for coming to class today. I'm going to send this information to you. 5 o'clock right on the dot. Out here, 7 for you guys. What I'm going to do is we're going to take a break, and then I'm going to come up with a teaching on some of the things I think that we can work on to help us in our grammar. Okay, so this is just learning the signs and learning, how to say things. So we're going to continue to work on that. We're going to continue to work on, we're always going to be in the vocabulary and things of that nature. But then we're going to show you how to put these sentences together. Because right now we're just understanding, past, present, and future. First person, second person, third person, male or female. So those are all parts of the grammar and the structure, but then you got to know how to build. So now you got your pieces. Now we got to learn how to build something now. So I'm going to show you how to build a sentence. Okay, that's what I'm going to show you how to do and how it works. The syntax, right? So when someone comes and says something, you'd be like, no, it don't mean that. And of course, they'll argue with you. They don't even know what they're talking about. And you know what you're saying.